Dracula has been the original vampire we've seen in all types of entertainment, known for his cunning charm, vicious kills, and he's also mysterious. In almost every story, he becomes the center of that universe, and nothing keeps us away from him. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every new sub helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to create new content. With that being said, I'm your host, Jamie, and here are 10 films featuring Dracula. Number 1, Bram Stoker's Dracula. As the title states, the 1992 film Bram Stoker's Dracula is based on Stoker's 1897 classic novel, Dracula. My question for you guys, is it a faithful enough adaptation to be called that? I've only seen the film and I admittedly didn't like it much. It looks gorgeous, and Gary Oldman's performance as the iconic vampire. Critics were also lukewarm on the film, praising the production design and Oldman's performance particularly. The issue was in James V. Hart's script, who also had adapted the Peter Pan reimagining Hook for Spielberg, and would also produce Mary Shelley's Frankenstein with Kevin Baraona as in the director's chair. Hart's vampire adaptation was a bit of a big deal at the time, as it was helmed by legendary film director Francis Ford Coppola, who was best known for his masterpieces The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. Coppola's incarnation of Dracula is certainly lavish and sensual. It was also a financial success, grossing $200 million against a $40 million budget. I also give Coppola credit for funding his own films, demonstrating faith in his own vision, and you can experience it on Netflix, Prime, Apple TV, and Fandango. Number 2, Dracula Untold. Dracula Untold was originally supposed to be the first film in Universal's planned Dark Universe, but they backtracked after its poor reception. Then the 2017 version of The Mummy came out, which, sans action sequences, was worse, and so ended the shortest-lived cinematic universe as future projects in it were gradually canceled. Dracula Untold is a good example of an interesting concept that's poorly executed. The titular character, Vlad Dracula, is played by Luke Evans, who rose to fame playing Bard the Bowman in Peter Jackson's The Hobbit trilogy. In Dracula Untold, Vlad is a ruler and a warrior who finds his scout's helmet while venturing about, which he fears could signal a coming invasion. He and some of his men are attacked by a cave-bound vampire, which only Vlad survives. Upon his return home, he is met by an Ottoman emissary who demands boys for an army, including Vlad's son. Vlad seeks out the caged vampire to strike a deal, one that would set the vampire free in exchange for temporary use of his powers. I truthfully didn't think Dracula Untold was too bad. It's aggressively middle in the road in a lot of areas, but it is the potential that leaves much to be desired. The cast stands out, and there is occasionally inspired dialogue and action, but it is otherwise a humdrum affair. Dracula Untold isn't too long to watch though, running around 90 minutes. So stream it over on Apple TV, Prime, Google Play, and Fandango. Number 3, Renfield. Renfield is a brutal horror comedy and a direct sequel to the 1931 horror classic, Dracula. The film recaps many of the film's iconic moments in its introduction, but with star Nicolas Cage as Dracula and led Nicholas Hoult as the titular character, Renfield. The sharp satire expands on the Dracula lore and is a worthy sequel to the original film in its own right, but its genre skews to that more of a meta-comedy than horror. The gore is over the top, and the film often leans into farce. But modern themes about overcoming toxic relationships help ground this film. Nicholas Hoult, alongside Awkwafina, commit to their performances as characters who both evoke pathos. Nicolas Cage is unhinged, but when he is not, I am right, often in the best way, in his portrayal of Dracula. This blood-stoked comedy demonstrates that Cage can and does play a menacing Dracula in the moments he reins himself in, though. Renfield is an enjoyable modern take on Dracula, although it is less lighthearted than I expected. It functions well as a dark comedy carried by the lead performances. and you can witness it on Prime, Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango. Number 4, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Though it is better than the run-of-the-mill vampire film, I was a little disappointed since it was helmed by the fantastic Norwegian filmmaker Andre Øvredal. He's best known for acclaimed original horror films 2010's Troll Hunters and 2016's The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Now, those films did have different screenwriters, the former being Øvredal himself. Even so, given that Demeter was a studio film giving arguably too small a budget and wasn't marketed well, it could have been much worse. This vampire tale is based on a chapter in Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. The chapter is called The Captain's Log. No stardate though. Having not read Stoker's classic novel, I can't say how close it sticks to the chapter or how it expands on it. Regardless, I love the approach. The film follows the ship, the Demeter, traveling with unmarked cargo to Transylvania. Said ship is also attacked by Nosferatu, or Dracula. The ensemble in the film certainly lifts it from a doldrums of mediocrity as well. And said ensemble includes Corey Hawkins, who is probably best known for portraying Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton. I'm still waiting on that Aftermath film Universal. Liam Cunningham, best known for playing Devos in HBO's acclaimed fantasy smash Game of Thrones. The most understated character actor, David Dastmalchian, who you might recognize as Polka Dot Man or from The Dark Knight, or perhaps the contemporary horror classic Late Night with the Devil. But you can check this out on Apple TV, Fandango, and Prime. Number 5, Horror of Dracula. Not to be confused with 1945's House of Dracula, which I'd also recommend for funsies. But just to note, that one is a follow-up to House of Frankenstein. Horror of Dracula was released in May of 1958 in my hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as part of a double feature. It then had its London premiere 2 weeks later. The film was part of the pantheon of films from the notorious London-based film production company Hammer Films. The company was best known for its horror films in the 50s and 60s, bringing a lot of classic Universal monsters to color for the first time. Horror of Dracula was met with rave reviews, which also praised the late, great Christopher Lee's tenure as Dracula. Lee's career spanned over 6 decades, and he even had some posthumous work released after his death in 2015. He's played something iconic basically every generation, usually a villain, albeit dynamic ones. He was a Bond villain, the titular man with the golden gun, Count Dooku in Star Wars, Saruman in Lord of the Rings, just to name a few. Even earlier in his career, he gave an award-worthy performance as Dracula. He had presence and oozed sexuality while inciting menace. Plus, this is the first time audiences would have seen Dracula in Technicolor, and you can stream it in all its vivid glory on Tubi, Sling, Google Play, Apple TV, Prime, and Fandango. Number 6, Shadow of the Vampire. This particular film I found fascinating on many levels. The flick was released in 2001 and is a dramatized telling of the making of the 1922 film Nosferatu, Symphony of Horror. Now, the 1922 movie is the first vampire film and quintessential in the German Expressionism film movement. It's also just a classic of horror cinema. Adapted from Bram Stoker's Dracula by German Expressionist filmmaker F.W. Murnau, the film's effective use of light, shadow, and a jarring set design in order to convey a haunting atmosphere are still a staple of today's horror. 1922's Nosferatu is also a straightforward Dracula tale, only before Dracula was viewed as exotic or even sensual. The vampire Nosferatu was a monstrous humanoid figure. Max Schreck plays Count Orlok, or Nosferatu, in what would turn out to be a cinema-defining performance. Shadow of a Vampire sees Schreck portrayed by Willem Dafoe, while Murnau is played by John Malkovich. The story goes that Murnau wanted to make the film a perfect vampire film, and Schreck was, in fact, a real vampire. The movie does a great job handing handling this premise, creating a compelling narrative around what is essentially an urban legend. This marked screenwriter Stephen Katz's first feature film, as he had previously only written for a couple miniseries. Katz was no slouch, though. He also graduated from Brown with a BA in English and art history. The unique take on a vampire film was also produced by Nicolas Cage, and you can check it out on Prime. Number 7, Blackula. Blackula was released in 1972, right in that era of blaxploitation films. Though this take on Dracula isn't as silly as the title suggests, it certainly is problematic in itself. Given some retooling and a bigger budget to pull it from a B-movie status, there certainly is something there. This incarnation of Dracula sees the African prince, Mamuwalde, in the 1780s, bitten by the legendary vampire while on a trip to Transylvania, thus turning him into a vampire as well. Prince Mamuwalde would awaken in LA in 1972 after his coffin is purchased and transferred there. Mamuwalde is portrayed by William Marshall, who debuted on Broadway in the 1944 production of Cameron Jones. He was also trained in opera. Needless to say, this film was beneath him. But if it helped pave the way for more diversity in films, maybe it wasn't so bad. That being said, Marshall's stage presence is undeniable, and his performance certainly elevated what might have been forgettable schlock. He was undoubtedly the primary driver for the film's success, as it even garnered a sequel a mere year later. Scream, Blackula, Scream. But you can stream the 72 original on Tubi, Pluto, Prime, Fandango, Apple TV, and Google Play. Number 8, Dracula, Dead and Loving It. This film holds a weird and special place in my little heart. I first saw this horror comedy on New Year's of 1996. I was 8. It was the one day of the year my sisters and I were allowed to gorge ourselves on food and stay up until midnight. Me and the fam watched the flick high on holiday spirit, which is a great name for a holiday mixed drink. The goofy-ass movie made me laugh, but also deeply disturbed me. Come on, I was 8, and there was a surprising amount of blood. The Dracula parody was also one of my earliest experiences with Mel Brooks. Turns out this red corn syrup coated comedy is one of the comedy masters Mel Brooks' worst reviewed films, with a dismal 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yikes. On top of that, the flick was a flop, grossing $10 million on a $30 million budget. It also marked Mel Brooks' last film as a director. Even after a recent rewatch, it still possesses a certain charm that presses that 90s nostalgia dopamine button. Masterclass comedic actor Leslie Nielsen, who portrays Dracula, makes the best of the material. Even Peter McNall's performance as Renfield is often scene-stealing. So stream Dracula, Dead and Loving It on Plex, Google Play, Prime, Fandango, and Apple TV. Number 9, Van Helsing. Director Stephen Sommers' whiz-bang reimagining of the Boris Karloff-led 1932 classic horror film The Mummy was released in 1999. It quickly became a box office hit as well as a millennial favorite. In 1998, Sommers would also deliver a delicious B-monster movie that us here at Fat Ninja have a bit of a soft spot for, Deep Rising. Because of the smash success of the Mummy franchise, though, Sommers would helm another big-budget modern take on a classic character, the notorious vampire hunter that isn't Blade or Abraham Lincoln, but Van Helsing. I recall being pretty excited about the film when it hit theaters in summer of 2004, and I enjoyed it back then. I'll admit, I didn't know anything about Van Helsing lore, but I was a big fan of The Mummy, of Hugh Jackman, who portrays Van Helsing, and was coming hot off X2, and obviously Kate Beckinsale, who just the prior year was fighting werewolves. But I digress. Ultimately, this monster mash was critically panned, with critics praising the cast, but deriding the overuse of CGI as well as the thin script. The vampire action flick that sees Van Helsing go toe-to-toe with Dracula, an other Universal movie monsters, did gross 30 million worldwide. The budget was reported as high as 160 million, so plans for sequel quickly faded. Regardless, you can stream this on Hulu, Fubo, Sling, Roku, Prime, Fellow, Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango. Number 10, To Die For. This independent Dracula film was released in May of 1989. It was made on a small budget of $1 million, though director Darren Serafin would direct several films in the 80s and 90s. He will most likely be remembered as a television director, directing episodes on several hit TV shows, including Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Lost, House MD, and The Strain, to name a few. Now, this is more of a rom-com than anything, as Vlad finally comes back and makes an appearance in the present-day LA, where he meets a woman and falls in love with her, but things are never as they seem. An old enemy is lurking in the shadows, waiting to get his revenge on the infamous vampire. It's really just a cute film and deserves a go, which you can watch over on Netflix, Plex, and Prime. Thanks for checking out the video. Did we leave any films off the list? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to tap that bell icon to stay up to date with our latest releases. You can reach out to us on Twitter or X at StudiosFat, or chat with us on Discord, linked below. We're also now on Blue Sky. You can find us at studiosfat.bsky.social, which will also link below. If you're really enjoying our content and want to help support us, click that join button for exclusive content, rewards, and perks. Make sure to check out our very own merch store located at fatninja.shop. All proceeds go towards our next film project, so we'd greatly appreciate it. I've been your host, Jamie. Thanks again and take care.